Our speaker, Rick Titan, Crush Your Stress. And Rick is a former World Wrestling Entertainment superstar, and he's currently a transformational coach. And as of late, he's been 15 years studying Eastern religions, everything from Taoism, Hinduism, as well as yoga philosophy, and also spent some time with a Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist monk. So with no further ado, I'd welcome Rick to the front, and please give him a good welcome. Thank you.
So thank you for having me here tonight. It's an honor and a privilege to be speaking for Prostate. It's a real pleasure. I'd like to talk about a topic tonight that's very dear to my heart, and it's stress. Because I've had periods in my life, especially after my professional wrestling career of 10 years that collapsed on me. I've had high levels of stress, and I know that they can affect your health, quite obviously. So we're going to talk about something fairly serious, but hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun tonight too. Does that sound good? Yeah. All right. So how many of you would like to kick the crap out of your stress over anything at any time at the snap of your fingers? Yes? All right. What kind of a difference would that make in your life? If you had some higher self-esteem, higher self-confidence, would you make different choices? How many times has doubt and uncertainty got in your way, roadblocked you from success? Stress will do that to you. So tonight we're going to talk about a few things to overcome that. And for those of you who are interested, I'll show you how you can continue the relationship with me as well, if you're interested in going further in this information. And we've got about an hour tonight, right? Yeah. So there's no way we can knock the ice off all your challenges tonight, but we'll get to a few good tools and points for you. Does that sound good? Yeah. All right. So some of you might know my story. I was full of pride, full of challenge. I was a World Wrestling champion. I was in WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, for quite a while. And how many of you guys have let your pride and your roadblocks really get in your way in your life? Nobody. We know who's telling the truth here. So what would it be like to really let that go? If you can let go of your pride, your roadblocks, your stress, it'd be a much better life. So for the past 15 years, that's the question I've been digging away at, is how do I drop the crap in my stories and drop my stress? It's been a big thing for me. So tonight I'm going to share with you a few things on how you can do that. Have you guys ever heard the saying, though he should conquer 1,000 men in a battlefield 1,000 times, is he or she who should conquer himself or herself who is the greatest victor? Never heard that, huh? That's a saying from the Buddha. So that means a lot to me, because having been a professional wrestler, of course we know it's fake. Don't mean to let you down for those of you who didn't know. But it was like a battlefield. And I found afterwards conquering myself was a lot bigger than going in there and trying to be a champion. So I'm going to share with you 3 philosophies that I learned along the way over the last 15 years on how to conquer your 3 inner enemies: anger and stress, resentment, frustration, attachment, and aversion. I call them the 3 A's. So have you guys heard the saying before that the tail does not wag the dog? Yeah. So the reason why I bring that up is because it looks like from the outside that the tail's in control. The tail's got a mind of its own. But really it's the dog, right? The dog is the source. Even if it's subconscious, the dog is actually wagging the tail. But to us it can look the other way around. And what I found over the years was I thought that my emotions controlled me. And I discovered later on that if I'm in tune with things, then I'm the source. I'm in control of my own emotions. But it comes with a certain level of awareness too. And as human beings, we're habitual. We've got instincts just like animals do. You know the tale of the black widow spider? The male spider tries to crawl into the den. He just wants to have a little fun. The female spider wants to add to the world. So they mate, and she knows instinctively, given by God, that she wants to have the babies and have the eggs and add to the world. And she also knows instinctively that the male spider, out of instinct, is going to eat the eggs. So the female spider then kills the male spider. Instinct. And we're pretty instinctive sometimes too. I mean, we need food, we need shelter, we need safety, all these things. And we can go by knee-jerk reaction, gut reaction a lot of times. And so we'll think, in a certain sense, that we can't help the way that we're doing things, or we can't help our emotions. I can't help it. It's just the way I am. I was born that way, right? Eleanor Roosevelt once said that nobody can make you feel anything without your prior consent. So you can choose to be a victim, or you can choose to be a champion. And I know some of you are in a really tough position right now. I'll talk a little bit later about my tough position. It's not really comparable, but there is a way out psychologically, at least, and to come to a space of peace and calm with things, no matter what it is. I used to complain and say, I'll never, ever be able to do that, or I'll never, ever get over this. And I'd play victim. I'd play small. And my life at that point kind of sucked. It's no fun playing victim or feeling like a victim. And what the deal is that when it comes to something like that, emotional pain or stress, we have to face the pain zone, go through the pain zone. Most of us, typically, a knee-jerk reaction again is that what we'll do is as soon as we feel the pain, we run right the other way, right? Pain's uncomfortable, doesn't feel good. But the only way to get through stress or emotional issues is to face it head on and deal with it and go through it. So the challenge is to be able to let go of this stuff. But letting go, as you probably know, takes a bit of work. And anything worthwhile in life is worth working for, right? Would you agree? So the deal is to get awareness, a certain level of awareness and real honesty with yourself and get really clear. That's the way to get through stress. And a lot of times what will happen is something negative will happen to us. And we'll place exaggerated attention on this negative thing. And you might have heard from the late Dr. Wayne Dyer, what we focus on expands. So that's when we get really stressed out. We're focusing on the negative. And if you ever heard of Rumi, the Middle Eastern poet, we ruminate on these things over and over. We ruminate on the negative issue. We get more and more stressed out, and it builds and it builds. And that's how stress works. But the only way to really grow past that is to have guts. Would you agree? To have the guts to face it and go through it, like a lot of you are. And I'm proud of you. It takes a lot of guts to be able to face something like cancer. And as I mentioned before, I had some problems in my life, not quite the same, but I know how difficult it can be to try to face something head on and how painful it can be emotionally. So hopefully you pick up some tools tonight to drop your stress a bit. What are some of the causes of stress? Anybody? Worry, yeah. How about finances, yeah. Children, sometimes they can stress you out. Our partner, business partner, or intimate partner, sometimes they stress us out. It can be a love-hate relationship sometimes. Even something like abuse or alcohol or drugs. If somebody else is doing that, it can be very stressful for us. Of course, doing it ourselves is very stressful too. And if somebody's wronged you, if you have a friend or a business partner and they've done something wrong and they've intentionally wronged you and they won't own up to it, that can be really stressful. Agree? So the effects of stress. What are some of the effects of having stress? Cancer. Yeah, you get bad health, ill health. Absolutely. So that's part of the reason why I'm here tonight, is to try and help you work through some of that stress and hopefully have a little bit less of the dis-ease going on. I'm not saying I can cure anybody by any stretch of the imagination, but a little emotional enlightenment might be a little bit helpful. So the effects of stress too can be overwhelm, right? Or trouble organizing thoughts, that fuzzy brain thing going on. High blood pressure. I've had high blood pressure before when I was really stressed out. It can be heart palpitations. I had a girl who was a client of mine in the office a little while ago. I just work at Better Medical Center on 5th Avenue and 9th Street, coaching people, doing consults there. and she was going to come in for a session, but she was starting to freak right out. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. Well, her and her boyfriend had been fighting for a long time, and it wasn't very nice, let's just put it that way. And she was coming in for the session, and they had just broken up. So she didn't know where his headspace was, and he was supposed to go pick up her daughter from school that day. And she didn't know what was going to happen there. Compounded with a bunch of other stresses. So she got so freaked out, she was pacing back and forth. She was having an anxiety attack. So we had to send her to the hospital. And she went to the hospital and she ended up on medication, having to quit her job. These are some of the effects of stress when we're really, really stressed out. They can be really debilitating. Sickness in the stomach, even a heart attack or a stroke. That's how serious stress can get. So that's why I love doing this and helping to share a few ideas with people on how to get through that. And last but not least, being stressed isn't sexy. It amazes me right now to watch Bill Clinton running around promoting Hillary Clinton. And he's the guy who said, "I did not inhale. I did not have sexual relations with that woman." It's unbelievable. It cracks me up.
He was just bought as and that'd be $950,000 selling that second.
So when we're stressed out, the way to deal with it best is to look within, and what I call it simply is the emotional charge. And what I learned from the Tibetans is they call it Shimpa. So an emotional charge can be just like we just had, a little laugh. It can be positive. It's that feeling in the sternum or in the gut. And when we're stressed, that emotional charge comes up. So if we can be really aware and head that off, that's part of the deal. That's the best way to be able to do it. And catch it ahead of time. So it takes some practice, some of the letting go practice, the de-stressing practice, and it's a thing where we recondition the mind. So when you have neural pathways in the brain, I was raised with a fairly spastic mother, love her to death, but she was always in fight or flight and everything's an emergency, and that's the way I was raised. And I thought there was no way to turn that off. I mean, I think it drove me in wrestling a fair bit too, to be that excitable, because you kind of had to be in that industry. But day to day, relationship-wise, it was pretty tough. And I made it tough on other people, and I made it tough on myself. And I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know how to get out of that mental state, that emotional state. So what I learned is that if we're stressed, there's a remedy. But we have to do those neural pathways, work on those neural pathways. It's like the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon started with one droplet of rain, then thousands, then millions, then billions of droplets of rain carved out the Grand Canyon. We have neural pathways in our brain that have been that exact same way since childhood. All of us do. So a way to work through that and erase those, or let them grow back in, is to carve out a new neural pathway. So if we're hanging on to the past, there's a solution. If you're frustrated or resentful, there is a way out. And the key is awareness. But does anybody really know what the word awareness means? To me, it's kind of a cliche. It's kind of overused. Almost like awareness should fall upon us or happen to us. But awareness is something that we need to work on. In the dictionary definition, it just means having knowledge or consciousness. That's it. Being aware. And then we can hit the recognition point, what I call the recognition point. Because a lot of times when we're stressed out, we don't even know what we're stressed out about. Sometimes it can be something fairly traumatic and then we know, but a lot of times it'll be one little thing after another little thing and combined, and it can be very subconscious down there in the subconscious mind, and we're not really consciously aware of it. And with that, it's great. That's what I love about the deep alpha state. So deep alpha means meditation. I'm sure you kind of understood earlier from the introduction. I studied for 4 years with a Buddhist monk, and I learned how to meditate. And it's not just that kind of meditation where you're finding a peaceful bliss and calm, and you're all fluffy and airy-fairy. They're very spiked, very pointed meditations. So they can help shift your mentality and uncarve or loosen off that old neural pathway and then carve in a new neural pathway. But even better than that, when I just mentioned alpha state, so what happens is as we're chit-chatting right now, this is just beta state. So we're at conscious level, we're talking, it's fairly superficial, it's nothing really deep. But when you go into meditation, you oxygenate the blood in the body. And then you oxygenate the blood in the brain. And it starts to change your physiology. That's how it works. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think that meditation's a huge mystery. But scientists have been working on it for decades too. And they're figuring these things out. They did a study one time. They had a bunch of people like you and I, lay people, and they put them in one room, and what they did was they put horror movies on, just atrocious movies, killings, this and that. And they also put prods on their head and had screens up for them. And they also then had another room full of Buddhist monks. And so they put prods on their head, and they had screens in the room, and they watched their brain activity. And the lay people, the people like you and I, the spikes and the peaks and the valleys were all red on this monitor. We're going crazy watching this. But because the monks have been practicing and conditioning their mind and carving in these different neural pathways, they were very mellow with a blue wavelength because they could see through what was really going on. They didn't get that excitable about it because they already practiced that state, practiced getting into the space of peace and calm over and over again so they could watch things like that and be fairly unaffected. How'd you like to do that? Live your life so you have crappy things happen and still be fairly unaffected? I'm kind of proud of myself. A year ago, I broke up with my ex-girlfriend. Not so proud about that part, but I practiced the technique. It's a let go practice, LETGO. I created an acronym for it. And if you're open to it, I can take you through a little meditation on that in a little bit. You open to it? Yeah. Okay. So I practiced this meditation, and typically, if I'd gone through a breakup, it would take weeks or months for me to get over it. I mean, I'd be sick to my stomach, I'd be tired in the morning and feeling like I weighed 1,000 pounds trying to get out of bed. And this time I went through this let go meditation. I went through it about 5 times a day. And I can't say it was all cleared out, but within 48 hours, I was feeling like myself again. I had the energy, I had the enthusiasm, I had let go for the most part. And I still have to go back and practice, and it has been a year, and it still bubbles up here and there, but I still work on it. And it's made my life so much better, and it's changed the lives of my students too, my clients, when they come in. Lori, my friend back there, is actually a coaching client too, and she's getting into the speaking industry. And we've got some really great changes that work for her going into that mental state, going into the subconscious mind. Going to the subconscious mind can be kind of scary for people, but it's really quite interesting. In hypnotism, they'll take you into theta brainwave state. So that's when you actually fall asleep, and then they can put things into your mind. They can supplant things and implant things while you're even sleeping. I've been through a few of those myself. But for a lot of people, that's kind of scary. So that's what I like about meditation, is that you can go into the subconscious or the other than conscious mind, but you're only going into alpha brainwave state. So you're still totally awake and totally in control. That sound good? I don't know, Rick. Don't hypnotize me. So things are a bit different now, but when I grew up, the religious tools that I was given was, you must do this. You must not do that. And by the way, you best have blind faith. Oh, and never, ever question me. That's what I grew up with. I don't know about you, but I always questioned everything. So that didn't work out too well for me. And that's what I love about this part of the program, is that you can see that there's a problem. When you go deep inside, you can discover what the problem is, exactly what it is. A lot of times, as I mentioned earlier, we think it's one thing, but when we go a little bit deeper, we'll find it's another thing. It could even go as far back as childhood. But sometimes we get confused when we're stressed. Yes?
When you're saying that, would it not help for you, maybe you can explain?
Could you speak up a little bit?
When you're saying that, and maybe you can explain how you do it.
Sure.
But in order to meditation. You can travel outside your own body and look right on your body until your palm is.
We're going to do an observer meditation just like that. So thank you. Yeah. Do you meditate a lot?
Sometimes.
Yeah. So this will be pretty easy for you. So what happens is when we do this, it's sort of like dissecting a body that the doctors do afterwards. They find out what's gone wrong. They dissect things, they pick it apart, they go a little bit deeper, and they pick it apart piece by piece and then put it back together. And that's what's so cool about this information and this state and this zone. So I was in 2 car accidents in my life. 2 totally different mindsets. First car accident I got in, I was driving my big aggressive black Dodge Ram Sport, and somebody crashed into me. And I got out of my truck and I walked over to his window. I said, "Get out of your car!" to him. Of course, he just said no. Good for me and good for him that he didn't. And I was choked. I was stressed. I was angry. I was resentful. I was frustrated. And I thought, man, now I've got to get this rental car. I'm going to have to pay a $500 deductible and this jerk. And I just kept going on and on in my head about it. A few years later, after doing some of these studies, or a lot of these studies, I'd shifted, I transformed, and I got in another car accident. What did I do then? Wham! Well, am I okay? Is he okay? Oh, okay. So I'll talk to him and we'll exchange information, and I was fine because I had shifted. I'd changed. You know, you can go and walk on rough and thorny ground, and you can do 2 things. You can either cover the earth with leather, or you can cover your own feet. You can try and change the world, or you can change yourself. That's how it works. And it can be really obvious in the animal world sometimes. I had a friend of mine, he was a police officer. His name was John, and his name is John. He's still with us. And he had a dog named Sarge. And so he took the dog downstairs. He wanted to show me something. It was the winter time, and he couldn't take the dog out for walks. It was minus 30. So he'd get his laser beam pointer, and he'd get the dog to chase it all over the place. He had a big basement, and the dog would be darting it, stopping, darting and stopping. And he says, "Now watch this." And he shuts off the laser. The dog's still chasing an imaginary laser beam, darting and stopping, darting and stopping. And we as human beings do that a lot of times too. We project our past onto our present moment. We take things that we've been hanging on to, things that have been stressing us out, things that upset or hurt us, and bring them into the now. And it doesn't serve you, right? It doesn't do you any good. In fact, it just takes you back. So the yogis, they say the yogis could stop the world. Have you ever heard about when a yogi actually stopped their heart rate? Yeah, they can literally do that. The doctors have them as clinically dead. We can do that too. We can stop our mental craving, our mental grasping onto the things that are negative, that we don't want in our lives anymore, hanging on to the past like that. And if you practice it, then you can live it, and you can carry that space with you. I think that's pretty cool. If you like right now, if everyone could sit nice and straight with their both feet flat on the ground, spine straight, and close your eyes. And imagine a string pulling up the top of your head so that your head's balancing perfectly on your straight spine, and take a few deep breaths all the way in, all the way out. Breathing deeply. And imagine that as you're breathing in, you're bringing in white light, purifying energy to the cells in your body and the cells in your mind. Purifying and cleansing. And as you exhale, you can simply tell yourself to relax. Breathing even deeper now. And relaxing even more on the exhale. Into state, into zone. Now, Start following your breath. Imagine watching your breath going in on the inhale, out on the exhale, in a space about 2 or 3 inches in front of your nose. Watching your breath, and then counting the breath. 1 on the inhale, 2 on the exhale. 1 on the inhale, 2 on the exhale. Relaxing even deeper now. 1, 2, 1, 2. Following the breath. Now go to the center of your being, your core, your heart space. Centered. And imagine yourself, your spirit, your soul, your entity, your being, stepping outside of your body in any situation that stressed you out. And imagine your soul or your spirit stepping back about 10 or 20 feet outside of your body, watching your body, watching what's going on. And seeing that Shempa, that emotional charge when it comes up. And this is the key. When you can see it coming, it can't affect you. Watch your body, watch what's going through your mind. A lot of times we have what's called monkey mind, where the mind goes all over the place and swings from branch to branch and tree to tree. I forgot to take out the garbage. I've got to pay that bill. What about the kids? But bring it to center now. Bring it to center and watch your body. Even watch and remember a situation that bothered you. And you can be the observer of self. That's the key. And if you practice this regularly, you can observe your emotions. Watching, seeing that Shempa, that emotional charge, watching that you over there. And relaxing in a neutral mindset. Just observing, just watching. And the next time something happens where you're stressed out or you're upset or angry, try and be the observer of yourself. Take a moment, take a few deep breaths, step back and observe rather than react. Now bringing it back in, bringing that spirit or soul back into your body and watching the breath once again, 2 or 3 inches in front of the nose. Breathing all the way in, all the way out, and relaxing even further. Nice and neutral, completely relaxed and unstressed. Counting the breath again on the inhale, 1, 2 on the exhale. Watching the breath 2 or 3 inches in front of the nose. 1, 2, 1, 2. And whenever you're ready now, you can slowly open your eyes and come back to the room. Do you have another question?
When I meditate, the first thing I do, I get rid of all noise around. So there's no noise whatsoever. First, then I leave it.
Yeah, that's fairly advanced. What I was taught was to try to remove all the negativities first so I could clear the way. I do believe in bliss consciousness and just relaxing. But it can get so much more powerful if you can focus on, okay, I'm in aversion, I'm avoiding that thing. I'm self-sabotaging myself, stopping myself from going to do the things that I know are good for me. Ever do that? Anybody? Self-sabotage? Yeah. Or the let go portion. Something like my wrestling career, for example. I loved that career. 10 years. And it all came to a quick crash. And so after that, I had to focus on that let go portion of non-attachment and hanging on, mentally grasping and clinging onto something that I loved from the past. I had to learn to let that go. I didn't have an option. I was never going back. I was injured. I couldn't do it anymore. But it took me about a year to get over it. And then more studies, and then it got easier. And then I went and learned a little bit of one philosophy, a little bit of another philosophy, because I like to take different parts from different philosophies. I'm not religious when it comes to Buddhism or anything like that. For me personally, I believe in a higher power, whatever that is to you. But I love the strategies in place that Buddhism does, because it makes so much sense. The last year that I wrestled in Japan was 1999, and I went over, and I was raised Catholic, so I've read the Bible already. And they had 2 books on the nightstand. And that night, for whatever reason, I was going to go out and party with the guys like we always did, go out drinking and go crazy till 4 o'clock in the morning. But that night, for whatever reason, I just hit this point where I didn't want to do it, and I stayed in, and I was rifling through my suitcases looking for something. I was rifling through the drawers in the hotel room. I don't know why. And then I found the nightstand right next to the bed, and I opened it up, and there was a little orange book called the Book of the Buddha. And I thought, no, I'll try it out, I'll take a read. And I read some of the pages, and I thought, wow, it really makes sense for where I am in life. Because I knew I was on my way out. I was pretty injured, I was sore, aching from my head to my toe all day, every day. And I knew my time was just about up. And I was reading these things about non-attachment, and about getting into that bliss state, and about aversion and the frustration and the tension that we create within our own self, and how we can get through that. And about anger. And believe me, I had a big ego and a short fuse when I was in my 20s. So I had to learn how to let go of the ego. We all have ego. And I think it's healthy to a certain extent, unless you go to the level of Donald Trump. It's there's a lot of ego there. And with this kind of practice, there's 4 levels of competence. Have you guys heard that before? 4 levels of competence? So it's like driving a standard. Everyone here driven a standard before? Yep. So you start off, and you think you know what you're doing. And you've watched somebody else do it, and you go, this is going to be a piece of cake, right? You get in there, it's like the first gear, right? Wonka, 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 stall, slam on the brakes. That's how it is the first time, or maybe the first few times was for me. And that's called unconsciously incompetent. That means that you don't know what you're doing. That's the first level. The second level is you get in there again, and you're like, okay, I know that I don't know what I'm doing. And you get in there first, and you're jerking it around, and you're stalling still, but it's a little bit better, but you still know that you're terrible at driving a standard. And after a little more practice, you get to a point where you can go first, think really hard, second, think really hard, third, clutch, and God forbid if somebody walks in front of you. Scared. So that's consciously competent. That means that you're aware, but you have to focus and try really, really hard and keep your mind right there and have no distractions. Consciously competent. And then after some more practice, you get to a point where you can go first, second, third, talk on your cell phone. No, we're not allowed to do that. And it's a breeze. You can drive a standard, no problem. And that's what it takes. That's the same with the meditation practices, the let go practices, the self-sabotage practices. They take practice. It takes work. But it's so cool in the end. And so that final level is called unconsciously competent, where you don't even have to think anymore. You're just driving, you're clutching, you're moving around, eating a sandwich. Now, you're probably not allowed to do that either. So that's how that works. It does take some practice. And when going into a space like we went into earlier, it's important to find the roots of stress. So digging down, going to that other than conscious mind, trying to figure out what the root is, trying to pull that root out of that unconscious area. And that takes away the stress. It's kind of the short rundown of it. But a lot of times what will happen is, once again, we'll place exaggerated attention on something. So if we know that we're doing that, have you guys done that before and been aware of it? Yeah, I'm paying way too much attention to this negative, crappy thing. Yeah? No? Yeah, I think pretty much everybody has. And so the idea then is to work at it, right? To pay very, very close attention to it and to practice awareness with it. Because if we just let that stress run us, then we're just like in a boat up a creek without a paddle, without the expletives. And Yoda said, there is no try, just do. So just work on it, give it a shot. And there are a lot of places here in Calgary too. I went and worked at Akshobhya Buddhist Center for about 4 years. I ended up being a teacher there. My teacher left, went to Edmonton, but it's a cool place. There's some yoga centers here in Calgary. But with yoga, the practice, the asanas, the exercise itself is 1/5 of the equation. So a lot of yoga philosophy goes really deep, and it talks about non-judgmentalism and not judging ourselves. You guys judge yourself ever? I think we all do. So I think that's a really cool concept to meditate on, is non-judgmentalism, or even just be aware of it and keep practicing it. And there are really 3 kinds of stress. Stress that comes up about something from the past, it keeps coming up. Stress about something that we're angry about or resentful about or confused about in the present. And then stress about something in the future, which hasn't even happened yet and may never even happen. What is it that Mark Twain said? Many a bad things has happened to me in my life, and some of them actually came true. So with stress, it can be something about work, right? It can be competition. It can be, there are a lot of job losses out there right now. So competing for a position there, it can be the job loss itself. And a lot of times when we're really stressed out, we can love somebody one day and really care about them, and we can be ready to kill them the next, right? So that's what stress can do to us. And a lot of broken marriages are a result of stress. And with that, we know a lot of times it's finance too. It causes the added stress to a relationship. So the antidote is to have compassion as well. Have compassion for the other people, and have compassion for yourself. Have enough self-care, self-love, and forgive yourself, and don't beat yourself up over things. It can be difficult sometimes, but if we can do that, then we can flow through the stress. Get right through it instead of letting it beat us up and take over our lives and be stressed to the gills all the time. So really the final tool of this is to really believe that you can. To believe that you can be stress-free, or at least really, really minimize it, because it is possible. And most people don't think that way out there. So I want you to be one of the 1%ers. Olympic athletes, billionaires, ex-wrestling champions. People who know that they can get de-stressed, and they'll go to work on it for themselves to make their lives and the lives of everybody around them a lot better. So, as Yoda said, there is no try, just do. Use the force, use meditation. And repeat after me. I'm going to kick the crap out of my stress. Okay, on 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1, I'm going to kick the crap out of my stress. Remember that. All right. How many people here feel like you got a little bit of value out of tonight? Great. And how many of you think that if you might be able to implement some more of these strategies that will make a difference in your relationships, your job, your career, even finance? And if you were able to implement more of these strategies, you might have a higher level of self-esteem, self-confidence. And with that, you can be unstoppable in the things that you want to do. So I'm going to give you a special invitation tonight here in Calgary. I've got something, it's a workshop coming up September 30th. Is that okay? Workshop coming up September 30th. It's called the Transformation Technique. So I take people through the exercises, and we do a lot of writing, we do some meditating, we talk and discuss it, we break off into groups, and we work really hard on dropping the baggage from the past. And from getting past self-sabotage or our own mental blocks or self-limiting beliefs that are holding it back from what you want to do in life. And also to get from scatterbrained to focused. And last but not least, to be able to get fired up again, to get psyched up or self-motivated over anything that you want at the snap of your fingers. And so normally if I'm out of town, I'll offer it for $400. It's a 6-hour seminar. And in Calgary, I'm going to do it for half price, actually a little bit less than half price. And it's strategies that I've been working on for 15 years. Very carefully designed them just for this. And so I've done a few of them now here in Calgary. And what you're going to get with the transformation technique is you're going to get that 6 hours of working on yourself so you can transform. Because if it's just a little change or a flash in the pan, I'm not really the guy for that. But if you really want to transform, you need a transformation that's permanent. Wouldn't you agree? Anything worthwhile in life has got to be permanent. So, with this 6-hour seminar, you'll get a copy of my book, Wrestling with Consciousness. So we'll go through the book. I don't have any for sale, it's just for the seminar. And we'll go through a lot of the book, wrestling with consciousness, meaning wrestling with your mind, wrestling with the things that you've been holding on to in the past, mentally clinging and grasping onto, or the things that have blocked you and stopped you from success, even in your relationships, in business, whatever it may be. It's very personal. And so I like to interact with people one-on-one. I go around and interact with the people one-on-one. I help them through things, we write them out, we make a lot of discoveries, because a lot of times we think we got these things inside all figured out. But oftentimes that's just not the case. So, Lori is going to be at the back of the room. I'm going to be at the back of the room for some questions. With the seminar as well, on September 30th, it's a Saturday. Sorry, September 24th, it's a Saturday. With that, you also get a set of audios. So the audios on how to let go, how to crush your self-sabotage, how to crush your stress, how to get fired up again. You'll get a whole series of those along with the book, along with the training, and because I care about people and I want to see them make sure that the transformation is permanent. Can you tell I kind of care about people? Because I do, I really do. What I'll do after the seminar too is I'll get on the phone with each person one-on-one, and we'll have a session afterwards so we can make sure that everything is implemented, so that it's there and it's set, so you can actually have that real shift. And that's it for me. Thank you. That's my little infomercial. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Questions,
Thank you.
Stuart? Sure.
Yes.
Go back to the mic if you would. Probably all the men in this room except for Rhett have had a diagnosis that was shattering. And the good ladies sitting beside many of these men in here had to listen and watch their fellow as they were going together through that particular journey.
Yes.
Have you ever focused specifically on a group of people that have had a similar experience?
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Well, what I found when I had that diagnosis, and that was 8-9 years ago, I found comfort in a support group. And I recognized the issues of everyone because we had the similar kinds of experiences and challenges, although solutions were many and varied for all of us in this room. But I'm just thinking from the point of view of a group of people getting new diagnosis, they perhaps could actually really benefit from a short-term journey that you could take them through on learning to address the issue that they have at hand.
Yeah.
We have seen people totally bitter come through this organization. We have seen people who have wanted to sue their doctors and have sued their doctors unsuccessfully. That's a service that you could provide to a group of 6, 8, 10 people, all with a similar condition.
Yeah.
Because they're all facing the same problem.
Well, I can't say that my situation was as serious as prostate cancer, but something I didn't share earlier was that I've had a rock bottom in my life. I was hooked on painkillers, Percocet, OxyContin, muscle relaxants, sleeping pills, and at the end of my wrestling career, I got DDT'd and dropped on my head and broke my neck. So I needed the painkillers, although I was using too many of them. And because I broke my neck, my career was over. The money was gone, just like that. I was badly injured. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with my neck. I just found out a couple of years afterwards that I actually had broken it in an x-ray. And every night after that, I would just sit there with taking the painkillers and with a bottle of vodka or a bottle of wine next to my bed every single night. And I got severely depressed. And each one of those nights, I wished that I didn't wake up the next morning. That's how bad it got for me. I thought my life was completely over. And that's part of the reason, and in fact, it's probably the reason. And I know it's not the same as cancer. At the same time, really bad injury, money completely gone. It's a pretty devastating place to be. And so that's why I started studying what I study. And that's why I do the transformation technique, the whole seminar. So, I mean, if you know anybody or if you'd like to come yourself, I've got it for half price for $180 instead of $400. I also do one-on-one coaching, and I'd be happy to help somebody at least emotionally move through some of the things and let go of the baggage and the stress and the resentment and the bitterness. I've been there myself, you know, and I don't think I could have gotten any lower than not wanting to live anymore by the next morning. So if that means anything to that, love to help people. I love working with people.
Any other questions? If not, I want to thank you, Rick. It's been a pleasure listening to you and enjoying some of your anecdotes. And certainly, as you mentioned, it's the examined life is what we have to try to achieve and see what it is that troubles us, and then do what we can to deal with those things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.